Hi, my name's Matthew DeSaro. For those of you who may have known me through other communities, I'm 7JP4 guy on antique radios and AI7RM on ham radio. Been a big passion of mine through my whole life is the history of technology. I consider myself an amateur historian of technology, in fact. And when I met my beloved fiance, Kayla Rhodes, who's here at the convention, and she got me back into Lego, I was looking for a way to bring together my interest in early computation technology and our shared interest in Lego. So that's what we have set up here today. This is a fully recreated functional example of what can be done with Lego's very first computer-controlled application. This was the Lego TC logo. And that was sold under Lego's Dactyl line, which was their early educational brand. This was before Lego Education, but served the same function. Actually dates back to at least the 1970s. I don't know the exact year that started. But then in 1986, they released a control box here. This is the control box or interface box, as well as control card that went into an Apple computer. So they officially endorsed the Apple computers, which were the standard educational computers at that point in time, for use in Lego Education. The very first software released that same year was the Lego Lines software, and that was a simple programming language intended for younger kids. But that was quickly replaced with the much more powerful TC logo, which came out in '87. And this was Lego's licensing the logo language, which was developed at MIT in the late 60s. So what I did was I tracked down all the pieces of this system needed to recreate a working system. I've got the original box, I've got the students' little guides. So the idea was you'd give a group of students, loan them this so they'd have the instructions, they'd build the Lego, and then hook up all the wires, and then they'd have to code it, right? Or of course you could, free build. That's the whole point of Lego, whatever your mind can imagine. So whatever my mind could imagine was using this to build a plotting machine. I got inspiration from the Lego Technic plotter set that came out a few years after this stuff, and originally used the 9-volt system and Lego Technic hub. So I took inspiration from that, designed my own plotter, stole a few features from that and a few from other plotters I'd seen online in a very, the true spirit of Lego, I'd say, put this all together. And then I went in and got Lego Logo working on my computer. This is one from my collection that I fully restored a couple years ago. I have the original discs, though I didn't bring them. They're pretty rare and they wear out with you, so I'm running off a copy here, of course. But I do have them, do have a license. So I wrote a series of functions here that let me control this plotter from Logo. So I have a couple of basic functions. In Logo, the way you declare a function, and I'm not a Logo expert, so I may not be using the official Logo terminology, but what I would call a function is with the to keywords. You go to pin up. So pin up is an action, so you might say to run if it was a robot, for example. And then you provide the instructions. So we're going to talk to port C, and that's indicated in the Lego notation with a double quote. So that means port C over here on the control box. You can see it's marked with a C, right? And you can take note here, there's a odd and even numbered wires on that, okay? So we're going to talk to C. Then we're going to set even, which means we're going to turn on the even pairs of wires as opposed to the odd. And then we have this wonderful on for command. And what this says is we're going to turn on for 2 units. All like Lego, everything's kind of unitless in its own wonderful way. And then the opposite for pin down. So just to be a little more advanced, we can accept a parameter to a function. So 2 plus x, and variables here are indicated with a colon. So 2 plus x some distance, we're going to talk to a, which is the x-axis, set even, which works out to be positive for the way I have the wires plugged in, and then we're going to go on for that distance. Again, the units end up arbitrary, but it doesn't really matter. You can still make your little pretty picture as long as it's self-consistent. There's a couple other cool things you can do with this. So for example, I want to always be able to bring the pen back to the 0, position. Otherwise, I would know where on the paper I'd end up plotting if I didn't have a home position, right? So in this case, home is left upper, so upper left, which is the standard for Apple II, which was based on how televisions work, which you start with the upper left corner and you scan. So in order to zero, though, I needed to be able to talk to a sensor. To do sensors, which are inputs, because we only talked about the outputs, we have these two ports which have the green lights on, meaning that they're active or true at the moment, labeled 6 and 7. 6 is my x-axis, 0 point, and 7 is my y-axis. So in Logo, the way you do that is you go, so defining a function to 0y, we're going to talk to B, which is my y-axis motor port, set odd, which means reduce it, bring it in the negative direction, and then we're going to listen to, this is the new command, listen to 7. 7 is the switch for the y-axis, the 0 switch. So then we're going to go on, which just means turn on the motor. And then there's this cool command that Lego put in here called wait until. So this is saying we're going to wait until the sensor. And so that means wait until the sensor is, thank you, wait until the sensor is true. And then we're going to turn it off. So that's how we come back and find our home position. And that's important here. I could have done this with, stepper motors or with a rotary encoder on the motors. That's how you do this in a professional plotter. But with only 2 inputs and pretty limited processing speed, this was designed to be easy to program, not efficient and fast for very good reasons. I found that just running the motors for a fixed amount of time was close enough to get the point across, and very much in the spirit of a simple way of getting an educational device to work, which is really what this is all about. So without any further ado, let's watch this machine work. What I've done here is I've written a bunch of subroutines, subfunctions that plot letters, I bet you can guess what that's spelling out, as well as some simple shapes. So with that, we're going to go Apple D, which brings us from the editor, code editor, down to the command window. And from here, we're going to start with the most basic thing we might want to draw at a Lego convention. That's a Lego brick. So we're going to go plot brick. Now it's not case sensitive here, but I just capitalizing it for a little bit of emphasis. All right, so now if we go over to the machine, we can watch the pen just went down, and now it's drawing the top of that brick. The Apple II being a single-threaded machine, I shouldn't mess with it at this point. We're just going to focus on watching the machine do its magic. So a couple cool things I've done. I'm actually using the stall torque of this Z-axis motor to keep a constant pressure down on to the pen in order to make it right. I played with different pens, felt tip pens, which is what Lego used in their Technic plotter kit. Work really well, but dry up after 16 hours, 2 days of convention, and so proved rather unsuitable. Although ballpoints are kind of boring, they work really well and they don't dry up. So that was what I ended up going with, at least for this event. As I played with it at home, I got some bigger, bolder lines with a bit of a bigger pen, but that's the reason behind that. So it's just finishing up the rectangle, but a rectangle does not a Lego brick make. In order to have a Lego brick, we have to have, well, studs. That's what defines the Lego as the Lego. So here we're going to watch it doing a little bit more intricate pen work here to draw those studs. The proportions were worked out to match those of a 1x2 brick. But I will say that due to slight differences in the friction on the axes, it doesn't work out perfectly. But again, for the intent as an educational tool, it's more than sufficient. I see a cone. So there we go. So it just finished drawing the studs on the top of the Lego brick, and it's now returning to home to re-zero itself so that we don't lose track of where we are and not end up putting the next piece of the drawing in the right place. Okay, so just gonna let that home, and then we can watch the 2 lights, the 6 and the 7. So X just zeroed, so the green light came on 6, and there was Y on 7. Okay, so once we've plotted a Lego brick, we ought to plot the one thing which every Lego brick says on it, and that is Lego. So with that, we will go plot Lego. So you notice as it leaves the home position, those lights switch off again, and now it's gonna come down and actually start writing out those letters. Because the code used to drive this is entirely under Lego control, you could have it draw out pretty much any arbitrary drawing within the tolerance limits of what the Lego axes will really let you do. you'll notice some slight pauses as it's moving. That's it moving from one subroutine to the next. So that gives you an idea of the latency in the whole system, and the reason why encoders would be a bit of a stretch is, probably some 10 plus milliseconds of latency in just moving from doing one command to doing the same command again. So that's the, a little limitation, but really, as much as I hate to say it, and I don't want to start any holy wars, but when I was in school, we used the original generation of RCX. And while a really powerful tool in principle, the software was so complicated and sort of glitzy in a not particularly user-friendly way that I got really frustrated with it as a kid and really kind of gave up on Lego robotics for many years after that. So I actually really like the simplicity of this. It makes for a wonderfully intuitive educational tool. So now that we have the brick with Lego in it, I'm going to do a go home. Again, we want to zero the system in between elements of the drawing such that we don't have an overall drift in the position, which would happen from running the motors first in one direction, then the other. We won't exactly come back to where we were before. Pretty close, but not exactly. So if you ask most kids, what was the first thing you ever built with Lego? The most common answer, it's certainly true for me, is a house. And in fact, Lego has taken the house as an unofficial symbol, I guess you might say, having built the Lego house, the home of the brick, in Denmark. So I thought it very appropriate to finish out our little demonstration drawing here with a picture of a house. So we're going to do a plot house here. Now, if you've ever drawn a house, especially a stereotypical house as a kid would draw or make with Lego, it has a slanted roof. And if you notice, so far we haven't drawn any diagonal lines. I've only either had one motor on or the other at any given time. Well, that's about to change. You see, it's pretty easy to do diagonals just by turning, at least 45 diagonals, just by turning on two motors at once. So just finding the start of the house so it doesn't draw over on top of the brick. Okay, here we go. All right, 3, 2, 1. There, perfect. So it's drawing one wall of the house. Now watch, running both motors at once to do the roof, and there was our perfect 45. Okay, and then we come back down. Now, a house isn't much use without a door, so let's see if it's going to do that. Yep, there we go. There's the little door. Now, at the end, of course, in honor of a felt tip pen, it brings the pen up so we don't leave a spot. And that's about it. I'll bring the machine back to home, and while the machine's going home, I will present to you this drawing for you to take home. Thank you so much for the opportunity to take this interview and show off my latest Lego creation. Have fun.